Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you've had a good couple weeks. I've definitely been in the creative vortex. I've been working on finishing my book, my poetry collection, getting back in the music studio, working on an album for the fall, and creating some new containers and new projects to life. So it's been a very creatively fruitful time. And of course, I've been in the Michael Jackson multiverse and immersing myself into all of that goodness. And I've found it to be very creatively activating in all the best ways. And it really is been, I know this is going to sound cheesy to sound, but like purifying my spirit and my human and my heart and my mind, and like really clearing out a lot of old patterns and old, just old pathways and opening up new ones. And it feels very exciting, and I'm stoked to be here with you today. And I wanted to talk to you about essentially cultivating greatness. And I was writing about this yesterday. It'll probably turn into a Substack. But this concept, and it's very common in sports and in art, but sometimes not so common in entrepreneurial spaces or personal development spaces. Maybe because those are newer spaces. I don't know. But what was really coming through yesterday was, in order to be great in whatever your vocation, you have to be willing to suck first. You have to be willing to be bad. You've got to go through those awkward phases of sucking at what you do. If you're a writer, you have got to go through the trajectory of writing shitty draft after shitty draft and writing like the worst poems you've ever read, stories that aren't totally cohesive. You've got to be willing to be messy and to suck at something, because it's in the sucking that you will learn so much about your craft. You will learn so much about yourself. You'll find out if you actually give a shit about that thing. Because the things that you really give a shit about, you are willing to endure that. You're willing to stay the course. You are willing to suck. You are willing to be bad. You are willing to, make a fool of yourself in the pursuit of greatness. You are willing to put in the time and the energy and the effort it requires to become more masterful in your craft. That's how you know you've hit gold. And I think this is a really important exploration, and why I always encourage people to take time in their life to figure out what it is that they truly want, as if you fucking know who you want to be when you're 18 years old. Like, come on. I'm so glad that 18-year-old me was not making decisions about the future of who I would become. Yikes. But that being said, 18-year-old me did have some inkling of where we were going. There's always been this through line of art and performance and creativity that has been the heartbeat of my life. And I'm very grateful for that. I remember when I was, I think, 3 or 4, and asking for a microphone for Christmas. A little stand-up microphone, a mic stand. It was black and yellow. I wanted to be like Michael Jackson, y'all. No joke. And I got that gift at Christmas that year. And I remember being in my grandparents' living room, which we weren't really allowed to be in aside from Christmas, where we got to open our presents in the living room. And I set up this mic and I just sang my little heart out. And I was singing in choirs from 5 years old onward. I had my first solo in the children's choir at 5 years old. And I was in school choirs and church choirs and on stages from a very young age. I danced, and eventually I went into performance choir, and I was in an international performance choir where we traveled around the world performing on really big stages for really big audiences. It was the best. My first job was a performer at a theme park. So like when you go to Disneyland and you see the dancers on the stage and the singers on the stage, that's what I did. I actually did perform at Disneyland in junior high. I was one of those stage performers in junior high. And for everyone in America, that's middle school. We call it junior high up here, grade 7, 8, and 9. And I think I was in the 7th or 8th grade. I can't quite remember, but I was pretty young. And it was just so natural for me to be on those stages and perform. And then going into junior high and high school, entering into theater programs and getting that level of performance under my belt. And throughout my young adulthood, there was a lot of partying. Let's be so for real. Took a little break from performing and did a little deep dive on partying. And those years were really fun because the majority of them I spent dancing at bars, partying and dancing, having a great time, and taking a lot of dance classes. During that season, even though I had taken time off of performing in a serious capacity, I was still dancing every week. Multiple different types of dance classes in the studio, practicing, and then going out to the bars and dancing every night. And you may think that that's an exaggeration, but I am not exaggerating. Like my bar star days, like when I do things, I go all in. In my bar star like period of time, no joke, I was out every night of the week. And I think early 20s, like I had the stamina, I had the energy for it. Now, I can't even think about going to a bar. I'm like, yikes, no. It's so loud and all the people, it's not my jam. But 25 years ago, that was my jam. I loved it. 20 years ago, I don't know. I'm terrible at math. I was not meant to be a mathematician. I was meant to be a creative. And that period of time, I got to immerse myself in a slightly different vein of creativity, but it was always there. And then I got into a band in my mid-20s, was the lead singer for this band for 4 years. And we had a recording studio and we wrote music. That was my first real songwriting. Don't get me wrong. I've been making songs up since I was a kid. And they weren't good, but I thought they were funny. And when I entered into this band and we had a recording studio and I started to write songs more seriously. But when I look back on those songs, they were terrible. Like, terrible in the sense of the lyrics really didn't make a lot of sense. There wasn't a lot of emotional depth. In my writing yesterday, I was sitting with the reality of, if I want to be masterful at what I do, I have to be willing to suck at it first. And I have definitely gone through those phases of being a beginner and being humbled by that and it being messy, and you got to figure it out and you got to suck at it first. And also, I realize that this path that I've taken with relational mastery has also been very on purpose and very much in service to my art and my creativity. Because the more emotional processing I did, the more relational mastery that I anchored in, the deeper and richer and truer my transmissions became with my songwriting. So if I compare the songs that I've written now to the ones that I was writing in 2005, like they're in two different stratospheres. And yes, there's been time and practice that's gone into that, but also the deepening of the access to myself and to my own heart. And, the reason why it kind of came to me, why that was also important. I thought it was like, oh, I just want to figure out love because I want to be in a relationship and live happily ever after. And sure, maybe there's a little bit of that in there, but when I look at who I am and my relationship to relationships is very unconventional. I've never been one to want to get married and be with one person for the rest of my life. I'm not opposed to it, but that has never been my driver. That has never been the goal. My approach with relationships is I'm going to be in the relationship with who it's true to be in a relationship with at any given chapter of my story. And I'm going to continue to give my everything. Like I go all in. I don't fuck around, but I'm going to go all in, and I will be in that relationship for as long as it's true. For as long as that relationship is in service to both people and in service to not only who we are here to be and become, but also in service to our gifts and our expression. And if at any point in time we have stopped growing together, and it is actually the more loving thing to do to end the relationship, then I'm willing to do that. And that is just a very unconventional thing. Most people just want the fantasy of the fairy tale. And some people legitimately think that is their dream. And that's a beautiful dream to have if it's true. It's also totally okay if that's not your dream. And for me, I like experiencing different people. I like experiencing different relationships at different chapters of my life. I have tried every different style of relationship that you could possibly try. And my life is really about experimentation. I know I've talked about this in previous episodes. And so for me, the reason why I got into that work wasn't necessarily, at the time I thought it was about that and really being able to fine tune my relationships and open up and figure out this mystery of love. And that is all true. But now being where I'm at and looking backwards, I'm like, oh, there was actually an even bigger reason. And that bigger reason was, in order to really serve my art, in order to really serve my creativity, I cannot be emotionally constipated. I cannot be emotionally blocked. I can't be afraid of feeling my fucking feelings. And I also, if I'm going to be, really successful in terms of honoring the mission of my creativity, and all that really means is letting it out of the bag and letting it exist in the world, my relationships also need to be dialed. Because when we are in dysfunctional relationships, whether they're friendships, whether they are romantic relationships, whether it's our family, whether it's work, it doesn't matter the form of relationship, but if they're dysfunctional, your creative energy goes into dealing with all of that drama. and trying to figure it out and trying to stabilize and trying to create coherence and connection. And that is going to be where the main focus goes for your creative energy, because you need a lot of energy to uphold a relationship that's misaligned. And so by understanding the mechanics of relating, it has now opened me up to create relationships that actually really work for my system. They work for the chapter of my life that I'm in, and they free up my creative energy to be able to plug it into my writing, my songwriting, movement, whatever project I feel like taking on that's creative in nature. And when you have relationships that are really healthy and they're really aligned, and you know how to maintain those relationships in, it doesn't mean that there is an effort. You have to put in effort for these relationships to thrive. But when you know exactly what the nutrients are and how to get there, then you just do the thing to provide the nutrients to the relationship, and then that relationship feeds you back. The relationship becomes this amplifier. It becomes this springboard into your dreams. And if your relationships, like your friends, your close friends, your partner, like the people that you keep close, if they are not springboards for your dreams, you need to do a little bit of inventory there. You need to sit long and hard with yourself and be honest. Like, am I willing to sacrifice the expression of my heart and the expression of my dreams in order to maintain a relationship that isn't even feeding me? We've got to be really honest with ourselves, because the company we keep really does determine where we go in life. The people you keep around you are either going to be champions for your greatness and you're going to be a champion for theirs, or they are going to be a suck on your energy. They are going to drain your life force energy. They are going to move you off course. They're going to be threatened by your creativity, threatened by your expression, threatened by your success. And if you are here and you have a mission, which you do, because you would not listen to me and you would not be in my vortex if you didn't. Like, you are an artist, you are a creative, you are a visionary in some way, shape, or form. And you've got to do life and love and relationships different in order to support the thing that you're here to bring into the world. Like, you have a gift, you have something that the world needs in order to continue to evolve in a positive direction. Like, we have a lot of shit going on the planet right now. And I truly believe that the artists, the creatives, and the visionaries are, if we are going to turn it around, if we have any hope of turning this planet around and turning humanity around, it will happen as a result of the creatives, the artists, and the visionaries. And this is why it's so important that you get in the game. It's so important that you get over that embarrassment of sucking. Every new level of whatever your area of expression is will require you to be a beginner again. It will require you to suck. And if you are willing to go through that alchemical journey, and you are willing to dissolve your shame, because that's really what holds most people back, is just their shame. And when you dissolve that and you're like, you know what? I'm a big fucking deal. I'm here to contribute something truly extraordinary and magnificent to the collective. I can't be fucking around being in relationships that are dead ends or that are sucking me dry and draining my life force energy, or that I have no creative energy left because I'm in constant drama. And so learning the relational skills to put up boundaries, advocate for your needs, build true relationality in your relationships is very important. And also being willing to face yourself fully and feel your feelings. So many people are just running from their feelings, and they're so emotionally constipated that the things that they're creating are surface level because they won't go into the terrain of their heart and feel their feelings and feel their vulnerability. And I'm not suggesting you need to fillet your heart and all of your private, life onto the internet for consumption. That's not what I'm saying. You don't even need to put it into your art directly, but it's in the process of unblocking your emotions and letting them flow freely and having approval for them that you will be able to channel what it is that you are here to channel in terms of your art, your expression, your creativity, or your vision. And so coming back to this part of, all of it belongs, like every single thing that I've done I can see now, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, of course. Of course, I had to go the route that I went and learn the things that I've learned. And the through line is always creativity and expression, always. And as long as I stay connected to that heartbeat and I stay creating through that heartbeat, I know that I will fulfill what my destiny is here. I know that I'm on this planet for a very good reason. And my life is, crazy as it sounds, is bigger than just going through the motions and then kicking it at 100 years old. Like I'm not meant to just go through the motions, and neither are you. You're here to create. You're here to feel that full flooding of aliveness. And it doesn't matter what you're creating. It really doesn't. You could be creating a meal. You could be creating a community project. You could be creating music. You could create books, movies, TV shows, performances, movement, dance, fashion. There's so many things that are creative in nature. And if we're going to, like I said before, if we're going to turn this planet around, we need more people in their creative energy. Because right now, what you see is just a manifestation of people being in their destruction energy. And that's what happens when you don't direct your creative faculties into something that's of service to the world. They go dark. They turn you kind of inside out. They invert you in the sense of we now use our creative energy to feed and fuel more of what we don't want to see in the world. So we first feed it with our thoughts, and we feed it with our energy and our emotions. We plug into those channels. I said to a client last week, I'm like, if you want to hear different music, you have to change the station. And once you change the station, you hear new music. And it is very much like that. You got to plug into a different station if you want to hear something different. And you've got to use your energy in service to creation if you want to see a world that looks different than the world that you're not impressed by. I'm certainly not impressed by a lot of what happens on this planet. A lot of human beings do not impress me. And what they have generated and what they keep feeding and the extraction, and it really turns me off. I'm not into it. But I also know if I really plug my energy in there, it siphons my creative life force. Instead of staying sovereign and being like, that shit's fucked, I'm not a yes to it. What am I a yes to? And let me get creating in that direction. Let me create the things that at the very least counterbalance that energy and open portals of possibility and weave in frequency consciousness and frequency medicine so that people can activate, turn on, and come back to their own hearts and start creating, writing, dancing, singing, however it wants to express. But they're creating. They're in a more life-giving, generative energy. That feels like a way better use of my life than sitting around complaining about the state of the world, doing nothing about it, and plugging my energy into dead-end relationships where my needs aren't being met, and I'm constantly in these cycles of drama. Like, none of that appeals to me at all. And in order to really play on team creative, team love, I had to really embrace the reality that in order to be on that path, it is a path of ego death, because you have to come up against looking bad and not looking good. Like, when you suck at something, you're like, damn, that's embarrassing. I've written, like, in this process of writing this book, I've written hundreds and hundreds of poems, and some of them are really good. Some of them are really bad. Because the really bad ones are often just like a purging of energy, and I just need to get these words out. Sometimes they're not even cohesive. They don't make sense. I jump around. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that was, but I got to get it out. And once I get out the shitty version, then the good version comes through next. Same is true in the songwriting room. If I'm really blocked and nothing good is coming, then I just write a really bad song. I make that my point. Like, let's just intentionally write a bad song. Lyrics that make no sense, melodies that are disjointed. Like, let's just try and make the worst song we could possibly make. And what happens in the willingness to go into that, in the willingness to make something that's shitty, in the pursuit of greatness, is that the energy gets alchemized, especially in the songwriting room when you have a couple people working on a project together, and you go in, you're like, okay, we're not finding the flow with each other, so let's just write a shit song. And in the process of writing a shit song, you have so much fun that you elevate the energy, you open the heart, you open the creative faculties, and then the really good song comes through, and it comes through fast. And so whenever we want to really create something masterful, we have to be willing to create the shitty version first. No one ever publishes their first draft, and that is intentional, because the first draft is usually trash. Not full-blown trash, but compared to the final version, it's not good. And then but you got to get that first version out, the first draft out, and then you refine, you do rewrites, you edit, and through that process, you build and chip away at something that does become a really beautiful transmission of your heart. Whether that's a book or whether it's a song or whatever it is that you're creating. I'm going to reference those because those are my two main mediums. But please apply it to whatever ways that you are creative, and giving yourself that permission to have shitty drafts, have shitty versions, like, not be perfect. Let it be messy. Get that out of your system so that you can actually create and transmit the thing that's true. Even you can apply this even with like public speaking, right? Like, the first version of a speech that you write, and the first time you do it, it's probably not going to be that great. And if you go in with the understanding that this is in service to my mastery and I need to suck first. Like, I remember the first time that I was facilitating live, we had like pages upon pages of notes, and like I was so in my head. And it was still good for what I was doing at the time, but like I am light years from that now. But I couldn't be where I am now without that origin. I had to start there. I had to be willing to suck at it, to not be great, to not be the best. And as someone who played sports at a high level, was in a lot of performance, which is very high level, that was difficult for me. And I remember bartending. And this girl that I worked with named Jess, she and I were talking. It was slow that day. And she's like, you know what I've realized and I've been thinking about a lot? I'm like, what? She's like, you're just really good at everything you do. And without missing a beat, I just point blank said, well, that's because I only do things I'm good at. And we had a good laugh about it, but later in my life, so that would have been like in my early 20s that came out of my mouth. But in my 30s and 40s, I reflect back on that answer and I'm like, yeah, that is true. Like I kind of capped myself and kept myself in a bit of a cage because I would only let myself do things that I knew that I would be good at because I didn't want to face the embarrassment and the humiliation of sucking. But once I started to embrace that and I was willing to be a beginner again, I was willing to have it be messy, have it suck and not be great. That's how I refined my processes. That is how I became better at what I was doing. And I became more honest in my expression. And I learned new tools and new techniques, and I learned from other people. And so I want to give you that permission slip that if you have that hang up and that you're trying to like create the perfect thing, that's probably more of a hindrance to the transmission of the true thing that wants to come through. And the more that you let the true thing come through and let it suck, let it be bad, let it be mediocre, let it be not the perfect thing. When you get that out of your system, you're actually preparing yourself to create more masterfully down the road. And it also opens you up to be teachable, to be coachable, to learn from people who have already walked the path. And when you're willing to learn from people that have walked the path and you're willing to be in the pocket of devotion and you practice and you refine and you get better and better and better and better, you are going to bring something into the world that is truly extraordinary. And I, for one, am very excited about being in a world with you and people like you who have their creative hearts on, who are willing to bring their gifts and their talents out into the world in full form. Because like I said, that is how we start to shift this trajectory of the planet. It's how we start to shift the trajectory of humanity. And that is something that's really important to me. And if you're an artist, if you're a creative, if you're a visionary, you need to know why you're compelled to do what you do. And it's not for fame. It's not for fortune, although those things may come with the expression of your gifts. But there's got to be a deeper driving force. And when you connect to that deeper driving force, it allows you to withstand and like bear the embarrassment of sucking, of like singing a note and then your voice cracks or not quite hitting the note or writing a first draft that you're like, wow, I hope no one ever finds this. but in that process of allowing the shitty work to exist and allowing it to be just as valuable as the masterpiece that you end up channeling and bringing through, the process becomes more enjoyable. Like now, when I write a shitty poem, I'm like, oh, that's a shitty poem. Okay, no big deal. Like it doesn't fuck me up. When I get in the studio and I sing a note that was really off, do I have like a flash of embarrassment? Yes. And then do I laugh about it with people in the studio? Also, yes. And then do we just take another take until we get it? Also, yes. Like sometimes I'll go in and the first take is the take and it's perfect. But that's very rare. Most of the time, I'm doing 100 shitty takes before I get that perfect one, before I get the one that I'm going to use. And that is the process and path of mastery, is willing to be patient and also being so dedicated in your process that you are willing to do the 100 shitty takes to get the good one. The 100 shitty drafts to the good one, the 100 shitty movement practices until you get to the good one. There's so much about performing and creativity and expression that there's like ample time to be playing with and exploring. And when you're trying on something new that you've never done before, you're not going to get it right. You are going to fall and, hit the wrong note and put the comma in the wrong place or like have terrible grammar. Y'all would be so entertained at how terrible of a speller I am and how shitty my grammar can be when I am just kind of free writing. And then I go back and I read it. I'm like, what the fuck was that? What am I trying to say here? And then I laugh about it. And then I go and I'm like, okay, now let me work on this. Like, that's just like phase one. Like, let me work on it. Let me refine it. Let me like pull out the gold. But I can't do that if I'm too self-obsessed to ever let myself suck. Because if my whole self-image is I need to be perfect, I'm not going to let myself be shitty at something. And I'm going to take that really personally. And I'm going to take that as evidence of maybe I shouldn't be doing it. But that's not the truth. I know I should be doing it. And the truth is, part of the journey is this constant process of refinement. Of like, shitty, suck, refine, greatness. And then you just keep running that over and over and over and over again. You're going to have ego death after ego death. That's a good thing, because it chips away at all of those false selves that you've constructed in order to exist in a world that doesn't support you in your fullest self-expression. So why would we bother keeping those masks on, keeping ourselves in cages? When we can take the mask off, the door to the cage is open. We just need to step out of it. And when we do, and we start creating from this place of permission, self-approval, understanding that more humility frequency of, yep, I'm going to suck at first and I'm staying with it so that I can move into mastery. That's where the magic is. And so big takeaway today is let yourself suck. Okay? Let yourself create things that are shitty, that are messy. Just do it for the bit. Do it for the sake of your fullest, truest, masterful expression. Get over yourself and needing to be perfect. You don't need to be perfect. You get to be wholly human, messy, full range. Like, there's nothing wrong with needing to refine your process, because it's in refining your process that you're actually going to create art. You're going to create whatever you're here to create, and it will have that depth of your spirit and your soul in it that serves people, serves humanity, and stands the test of time. That's really what we're up to. That's why we're here, is to contribute something that lives on when you're no longer around. And I'm just very excited to be on that track and on that trajectory with you. And I've got a couple new offers and containers that we're going to be playing with in the summertime and in the fall that are all centered around creativity and expression and visibility and really nurturing and stewarding that energy to life. And of course, you can always come in and work with me relationally. If you're like, I need that emotional and relational tune-up that you were talking about, cool, hit me up. I'm happy to have a conversation and see if my relational container is a good fit for you. And other than that, the poetry book will be out soon. We are in the final days of getting it together. Then we're going to do one final once-over edit. And then we should be having it to you by the end of this month or the beginning of July. Probably July. It's my birthday month, so that seems like a good time to bring it out into the world. And I love you all. Continue to create, continue to follow those threads of your desire and your heart and what you are here to bring into the world. That's not by accident. You know, those passions, those things that won't leave you alone, those are very much on purpose, because you're meant to follow the thread. You're meant to follow it and let it work itself through you. Let it create through you. Okay? I love you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to drop in a few more episodes later this summer. We are going to have some interviews with some of my favorite humans who are extraordinary artists and writers and creatives and visionaries doing really cool shit in the world. And I can't wait to introduce you to them. And until then, take good care of you, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye, friends.